Hashtag young gang.
I will blame the dreary day.
The dreary day. Mm-hmm. Got it. So are you ready to learn more about Jesus today?
I mean, who doesn't want to learn about Jesus? Isn't that what they say?
Yeah, I guess.
Spread the good news.
Spreading the good news like herpes.
What? No, that's not good news.
I mean, it's going to feel a little like that today.
Is it?
I kind of feel like it.
Okay.
Maybe y'all will catch what I'm trying to put down here. Okay. Anyways, last time on the Bible, Jesus fed 5,000 people by magically generating food, which he copy and pasted from Elijah. Not that he got the food directly from Elijah. Like
that would have been old. That would have been really old bread.
Yeah, it would have been weird. He copied the incantation he spoke in order to pop that shit into existence.
If he says the wrong incantation, it doesn't work?
Well, I think it kind of depends. Okay. Like, he could get something kind of weird. Like, maybe what's that fruit bread that people give out around Christmas? Fruit, not fruit salad.
Isn't it called fruitcake?
Okay, maybe. I don't know. Anyways, you could end up with that. Or, if he does it right, he'll end up with sourdough bread.
I mean,
I wouldn't hate that. But, he's got to speak it right in order to get the correct kind of bread and fish.
Well, then maybe he should speak the sourdough kind, because that's what I would prefer.
Like, I mean, couldn't he, instead of just multiplying the fish that were already there, couldn't he have, multiplied swordfish or, a great white shark or something like that? Then he wouldn't have had to create so much food.
I mean...
Or is it more of, a bite-sized thing? Everybody gets a fish?
I have no idea. Like a smelt? Like everyone gets a smelt?
Yeah. So then after feeding all the people, Jesus sends his disciples across this lake, the Sea of Galilee, they call it, because they have, grand ideas about their bodies of water. And he decided to walk across that water instead of riding with the disciples. Well, the disciples ended up getting into some trouble, so Jesus had to save them. Jesus then pranked Peter by making him think he could walk on the water, but, he ends up falling into the water. Once Jesus saves the disciples, he proceeded to tell them all that they should eat him instead of food.
What does he say? Bless you, my child, eat my ass?
Probably. But he followed it up with, listen, guys, I promise it's not all that awkward. Look, if you eat my ass, you will gain immortality. Oh, you also have to drink my blood, though. Okay? Drink my blood, eat my ass, and you'll become a vampire like me.
Does he do that weird hiss growl thing?
The hiss growl thing. Everybody's like, no wonder why you sparkle in the sunlight. So there's that.
Did Jesus sparkle in the sunlight?
I mean, why not? He's magical as shit. Might as well.
That would have made it easier to know.
Yeah, it would. It definitely would. That's all that happened last time. Today, Jesus is feeding 4,000 more people.
A lot.
Yeah. But the disciples develop a sudden onset of amnesia, and they act like they don't know how in the fuck they're going to do this shit because they don't have enough food to feed everybody. Apparently, they forgot what just fucking happened. And Jesus then looks at them like they're stupid and does the same magic trick that he did before. And then after that, a Canaanite woman pleads for his help. He just calls her a bitch and tells her to get away from him. And she's pretty stubborn, though, and she remains there begging for help. And so Jesus rewards her for being stubborn as shit. And so he heals her child.
Yeah, we women gonna get what we want.
I know. I mean, that just teaches you to be stubborn as fuck, right?
Persistent, not
stubborn. Okay.
Yeah.
Next, there's going to be a deaf guy, deaf and mute, technically. That's going to be important to understand this next part right here. He's deaf and mute. And so what Jesus does is he gives him 2 wet willies, speaks an incantation towards the sky, because apparently that's where his father and himself reside. And then he licks the guy's tongue, kind of like in a French kiss sort of fashion. And then he's no longer deaf and mute.
I feel like an all-powerful magical being could figure out a better way.
Than giving you a couple wet willies and licking your tongue?
Yes.
Well, does it help that he basically says unclog?
That doesn't help. That doesn't help at all. This is kind of like similar to the process of being cleansed, with the oil behind your ear and on your left toe and all that other kind of shit. Like, I don't understand these processes. You're a magical being. Just say, you're done.
Well, you know, what's weird is that all the other miracles, like for instance, we'll get to it later. I'm getting way too much into it. Anyways, next.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
There's a blind guy.
Okay.
Okay. He can't see shit.
All right.
All right. So what does Jesus do? He spits in his eyes. And then when that doesn't work, he rubs some dirt in it. And then the guy can see. He's healed.
I don't know about that.
I mean, last
at
time
least
I got
he didn't piss in his eyes. I mean, that's like
piss in his eyes.
Yeah. At least he didn't do that.
Yeah. I mean, luckily the decidedly dipshit wasn't there.
Right.
Yeah. To piss on his face.
Yeah.
But anyways,
or Trump
or Trump. Russia. Yeah. Trump loves the golden showers. But, you know, the last time I got dirt in my eyes, which I can't even remember when that was, but last time I got dirt in my eyes, it just hurt like shit.
It doesn't really help with the seeing.
It doesn't. Like you can't see until you get the dirt out. But apparently this is magical dirt, probably from the Garden of Eden up there in the third heaven or something. I don't know. Anyways, there's some other shit happens, but this is pretty much all the important stuff that you want to know. Cool. There's something about Pharisees and beware of bad yeast or something like that. I think there's like a yeast infection that goes around Galilee.
I don't think that's in there. We're definitely going to have to go through this.
What?
Yeah.
I definitely got like an A-. Like if this were turned in as like a little summary on this section, I think I would have gotten an A- on that.
This is a perfect example as to why you are not grading yourself.
What's up, heathens?
How y'all doing?
So apparently I got some things wrong in the opening.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess we need to go through it. Like
we definitely do. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, here we are going through it again.
You want to go ahead for the first time.
First try.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to start with talking about a Canaanite woman. Jesus, we know he's been going all about, right? And
like a whore. Sorry.
What?
This is
No, I just meant he's putting his, his left hand in and his left hand out and shaking all about and doing the hokey pokey all about the Middle East, healing everybody's shit.
I feel like this is just like a religious person's way of, discussing whoredom.
I don't know. That's not what I meant. I just meant he's preaching all about and doing his healing things and miracles, right? So that's where we're at. He's still doing this. And we're just going to start with the next one, right? Because it's kind of been the same kind of stuff going on.
Yeah, there's some interesting geography stuff coming up here, and I'll interject then in order to explain it, but let's do it.
Okay, so this story we're getting ready to read is in Matthew and Mark, okay?
All right, let's do it.
Leaving that place, which was, what was that place? Where were we?
I think so. last time we ended up on one side of the Sea of Galilee.
We were on one side of it and he left that side.
Right. And that's where he told all of them to eat me and drink my blood and you'll be immortal.
Okay, so he left that, and Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know it, yet could not keep his presence secret. A Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him, crying out, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is demon-possessed and suffering terribly." It was probably one of them Jezebels.
You think? Or maybe she was just, having a moment.
No, I'm pretty sure it was a Jezebel.
Oh, okay.
Jesus did not answer a word. That was fucking rude.
Cold fucking shoulder for sure.
Right? So his disciples came to him and urged him, "Send her away, for she keeps crying out after us." He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel." So like if somebody already believes and they're not lost, like you won't help them, that seems pretty fucked up.
Well, so the Canaanite woman was of a different nationality.
Oh, I got you. Okay, so she's not a Jew.
Right.
Okay, makes sense. Sorry. I got you. But I mean, wouldn't not the Jews be lost sheep? They wouldn't be sheep.
Right. Yeah. So the lost sheep of Israel are just the people of the nation of Israel. Because they're all like lost or whatever.
So we're not all God's people, just the Jews.
Right. They're still the chosen people.
Okay.
Later on in the Gospels, do you have them preaching to more of a Gentile crowd?
Mm-hmm.
So these are like earlier Gospels like Mark and Matthew, which is I think where this is being pulled from.
Yes.
They're more focused on like Israelites or the Jews.
Okay. So, the woman came and knelt before him. Lord, help me, she said. He replied, it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs.
Yeah, that's why I said he called her a bitch. Like, bitch, no.
Okay, well, that's fair. Yes, it is, Lord, she said. Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. Then Jesus said to her, woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted. And her daughter was healed at that moment.
Yeah, so this entire, if you couldn't tell by the culmination, the apex of the story here, it's all about having faith. If you keep faith in Jesus, then you're rewarded.
Yeah, whether or not you're a dog or a lost sheep.
Right.
Or we could just be people, but that would be too difficult.
Yeah.
Okay. This story is also going to come from Matthew and Mark, and it's about the deaf mute. Okay. Then Jesus left the vicinity of Tyre and went through Sidon down to the Sea of Galilee and into the region of the Decapolis.
I want to stop here real quick.
Okay.
Because this proves right here that the person that wrote this section of, I believe this is in Mark.
This is in Mark.
They were not like accustomed to the area because this is kind of a weird way to get to the Decapolis next to the Sea of Galilee, because Sidon is above Tyre. So Jesus left the vicinity of Tyre, went up through Sidon, and then back down to the Sea of Galilee in order to get to the Decapolis.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
I mean, you're adding a lot. Like, there's no point. It's not like he went to Sidon and he did some miracles or some shit there.
Well, he might have. They just didn't write about it.
Well, none that we know of.
Right.
And so it's not like they had to pick up any kind of like unleavened bread or something like that at the market in Sidon or something.
Maybe they had to go get some new shoes. Who the fuck knows?
Well, they had flip-flops, honey, not shoes.
Well, I mean, they had sandals. I mean, maybe they needed new sandals, or like maybe somebody had a tear in the ass of their robe. Or something.
I prefer to think of Jesus as walking around with Bud Light flip-flops.
But I also feel like they could go shopping in the Decapolis. Surely there's an outlet mall there.
Yeah, probably.
It's 10 cities.
But anyways, this is one of those things that is very front and center in the Gospels that show that this was not written by eyewitnesses, that this was written by somebody who was not familiar to the area and didn't even know the basic geography of the area.
Curious.
Yeah.
Okay. So after, so it's the Decapolis. There, some people brought to him a man who was deaf and could hardly talk, and they begged Jesus to place his hand on him. After he took him aside away from the crowd, Jesus put his fingers into the man's ears. Then he spit and touched the man's tongue. He looked up to heaven and with a deep sigh said to him, Ephphatha. Just like that.
Which means unclench your butthole.
Well, I mean, it means be opened.
Same difference.
At this, the man's ears were opened, his tongue was loosened, and he began to speak plainly. Guess it worked. Jesus commanded them not to tell anyone, but the more he did so, the more they kept talking about it. I feel like this should be one of those things that's like, if you tell anyone, I'll make you mute again. And then maybe they wouldn't tell.
Right. But also this kind of works against them because it's like, oh, the things that Jesus was doing was just so wonderful that people couldn't help but talk about them. Yet we don't have anybody writing about how people talked about them.
No, not at all.
Other than the Gospels, which is the claim that they talked.
Written much later.
Right.
Much, much later. By people who likely weren't alive.
Yep, definitely. And also Paul never mentions any of this shit either.
Yeah. Okay. So they weren't supposed to tell anybody, but they did. People were overwhelmed with amazement. He has done everything well, they said. This sounds very Trumpish. He has done good. He did good. He did all the things good.
I healed them hugely and they were very thankful.
And they said, sir, you are amazing, sir. Okay. They said, he even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. Great crowds came to him, bringing the lame, the blind, the crippled, the mute, and many others. They laid them at his feet, and he healed them. The people were amazed when they saw the mute speaking, the crippled made well, and the lame walking, and the blind seeing. And they praised the God of Israel.
So all of this is derived from previous prophets and everything like that, because they and especially some prophecies in Isaiah, because it's said that the Messiah will heal the lame, uncork the mute, and uncork the deaf.
What a weird way to put that.
Yeah, and also the cripple walking and everything like that. Like all of these things are things that the prophets said that the Messiah should do, or these are things that the prophets did that they interpreted the Messiah was supposed to do,
but better.
Yeah.
Right. So the next story, we're done with the deaf mute, right? That's where we were, right? Yeah. The next story is about the feeding of the 4,000. And this is also in Matthew and Mark. And we're at a place that's the hills by the sea. Okay? That's where we are. Yeah. The hills by the sea. It sounds lovely. Yeah. During those days, another large crowd gathered, of course, always the biggest crowds. Yeah. Since they had nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion for these people. They have already been with me 3 days and have had nothing to eat. If I send them home hungry, they will collapse on the way, because some of them have come a long distance. His disciple answered, but where in this remote place can anyone get enough bread to feed them? We just did this.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying about them developing amnesia all of a sudden?
We just did this.
How are we going to do this? And Jesus is like, I don't know.
Jesus says, how many loaves do you have? 7, they replied. Last time they had 5 loaves, right? And 2 fish. This time they have 7 loaves. He told the crowd to sit down on the ground. When he had taken the 7 loaves and given thanks, he broke them and gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people, and they did so. They had a few small fish as well. He gave thanks for them also and told the disciples to distribute them. The people ate and were satisfied. Afterward, the disciples picked up 7 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. Last time it was 12. This time it's 7. We're dealing in a lot of magical numbers all the time.
Right.
Like they're standard numbers. About 4,000 were present. After he sent them away, he got in the boat with the disciples and went to the region of Dalmanutha.
Yeah, so...
sorry, Dalmanutha.
Dalmanutha.
Dalmanutha. I put the wrong emphasis. I just mixed up the letters is all.
I was just going to say, again, this is copied from the Old Testament, Elisha and Elisha, miracles of miraculous generations of food. But this primarily comes from Mark. And in Mark, he has both the 5,000 and the 4,000 being fed. And the reason why is because he came across 2 different versions of the same feeding story, but he thought they were separate instances. That's why it's a very awkward thing piecing it together with the disciples saying, well, where are we going to get food from? Because, in the, with the 2 different versions of the same story, obviously they're not going to know. But
they're very similar though. The stories are very, very similar.
Right. And the author of Mark should have known that they were just 2 different versions of the same story.
One would think.
But that's why you have the awkward, with the disciples not knowing how they're going to get so much food and all this other stuff.
Okay. So we're done with that story. The next story, moving on, we're still having stories from Matthew and Mark here. The Pharisees and the Sadducees came to Jesus and tested him by asking him to show them a sign from heaven. We should all know it's not right to test God.
Well, unless you're Abraham, then you can test God all you want to.
Yeah.
He was a special case.
Was he? He replied, when evening comes, you say, it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, today it will be stormy, for the sky is red and overcast. You know what's interesting? I had no idea for the longest time that, I don't know if this saying predates the Bible, but have you heard the saying, red sky in the morning, sailor warning, red sky at night, sailor delight?
Yeah. It sounds familiar.
That's what this says.
Yeah.
And when the sky is red at night, you'll have fair weather. Right?
Yeah.
Red sky at night, sailor's delight.
Right.
And then in the morning, for the sky today it will be stormy, for the sky is red.
Yeah, I know. I get you. And I mean, I think that probably that developed before this because obviously there were people sailing around everywhere.
Well, even if it didn't, it's observable. So it's not like it's a magic trick. It's observable. It was true for weather then. It's true for weather now.
Right.
I just think it's interesting. Anyway, you know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times. A wicked and adulterous generation looks for a sign, but none will be given it except the sign of Jonah. Then he left them, got back in the boat, and crossed to the other side. God, they go across back and forth. They like ping pong across this fucking river or lake.
Yeah. So the sign of Jonah is disappearing for 3 days and then coming back. Because the sign of Jonah was being swallowed by the whale. And, he was in the belly of the whale for 3 days and then he got spit up or whatever. And so, I mean, that's what he's talking about here. He's saying that the only sign that he is the Son of God is going to be resurrection from the dead. And which is what ends up happening, because if you notice, all the miracles that he's done so far are not actually indicative of him being the Son of God. It's of him being a prophet of God, because plenty of prophets have done the things that he's done, regardless of
not
how,
as much, but
not
because different things have been done by different prophets. None of them have done all of this.
Right.
Yeah.
But my point is that those alone wouldn't distinguish him from just another prophet of God.
Right.
It's his resurrection that kind of show that is the example of him being the Son of God. Which is kind of weird because resurrection is also not something that's unique to Jesus. It was done a couple of times, I believe, in the Old Testament. At least once, where remember the guy robbing a tomb touched the bones of Elisha, and then he came back to life or something like that. He was resurrected. The guy that died and touched the bones. And then, of course, there's the many resurrections of the dead that Jesus, Elisha, and Elisha all did.
Well, and that's just within the Bible. I mean, there were other resurrection stories.
Right.
So, I mean, this isn't specifically unique at this time in this place.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. That's the end of that little story. The disciples had forgotten to bring bread except for the one loaf they had with them in the boat. Be careful, Jesus said to them. Be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees. They discussed this with one another and said, it is because we have no bread. Aware of their discussion, Jesus asked them, why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still not see or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes but fail to see and ears but fail to hear? And don't you remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000? How many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up? 12, they replied. And when I broke the 7 loaves for the 4,000, how many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up? They answered 7. Are those in the 2 different?
Yeah, they are.
But I mean, they've got it mentioned here. I wonder if, because this part is in Matthew and Mark, so I'm guessing they're pulling the pieces. Like when I broke the loaves for the 5,000 must be in Matthew. And when I broke the loaves for the 4 must be in Mark.
Well, Mark has both the 5,000 and the 4,000.
Oh, so this is probably in Mark. This section is probably from Mark. Okay, got you. We're square now. He said to them, do you still not understand? How is it you don't understand that I was not talking to you about bread? I don't know. Maybe because you fucking were talking about bread. I mean, do you know how frustrating it would be to try to communicate with this person?
Yeah, it would be pretty frustrating. But hey, that's how mystery religions work.
I mean, I guess. But be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Then they understood that he was not telling them to guard against the yeast used in bread, but against the teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Okay. You could have just said that.
Well, this goes back to when he was, because the entire time he's been trying to teach the disciples that he speaks in parables, and like to people that are not indoctrinated into Christianity, it'll be confusing and they won't get the message. But because they are indoctrinated, they will be given the full message, the real message. And so that's why I said the thing about the mystery religions is because they have like these forward-facing things that they tell people, but the real meanings behind them are only told to initiates within the religion. And this is just an example of that. It's like a small example that's, I guess publicly available. But this is just how the religion works at the time.
Yeah. Okay. So continuing on, this portion is just in Mark. Okay. They came to Bethsaida, and some people brought a blind man and begged Jesus to touch him. He took the blind man by the hand and led him outside the village. When he had spit on the man's eyes and put his hands on him, Jesus asked, "Do you see anything?" He looked up and said, "I see people. They look like trees walking around." Shit, that didn't work. Once more, Jesus put hands on the man's eyes. Then his eyes were opened. His sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. Jesus sent him home, saying, "Don't even go into the village." I mean, why not?
Well, because he's trying to play it low key. In Mark's gospel, Jesus tries not to be known. Like, he really doesn't want people to know about him, because if people know about him and what he's come to do, then he won't be able to accomplish what he's come to do. But he's trying to really play it low key.
I feel like if he was trying to play it low key, he'd do that. Instead, he's speaking to crowds of thousands all over and continues to heal people in crowds of thousands with thousands of people watching. That's not really like keeping it on the DL, JC.
Yeah, you would think that he would do that.
So that's all for today in this particular part of the story. We're going to move into kind of a transitioning point here. We're transitioning from what Jesus has been doing to preparing the apostles for the end. Okay. So in this section, we're going to have some interaction with Peter and some of the other disciples. Okay. Jesus' suffering is going to be foretold.
Oh, okay.
We're going to talk about some of the burdens of discipleship.
Okay.
Right. And the kingdom that they're going to discover the kingdom of God, right? They're going to talk about the kingdom of God.
Okay.
Jesus is going to be transfigured. All right.
Okay.
The apostles are going to ask Jesus about Elijah. He's also going to heal an epileptic boy, which I guess is nice. He keeps healing people. There will again be a prophecy about his death. Okay. They're going to find some pirate's gold in a fish's mouth.
Wait, what?
That was more along your lines. They're going to.
Oh, okay.
We're going to hear the story about the coin in the fish's mouth.
Fuck yeah. Pirate gold.
Yeah.
Better watch out, though. Sometimes that can fuck you up with a curse.
Yeah. There's going to be a pretty big fight amongst the apostles. Okay. We're going to talk about concern for the young and warnings about temptation. We're going to talk about works done in Jesus's name. Jesus gives the apostles authority, and Peter asks for forgiveness. We're going to have some parables, specifically about parable of servants in debt. Okay.
Oh, okay.
And that's what we're going to talk about.
Seems like we got a lot to talk about next week, huh?
We do. We have a lot to talk about next week.
All right. So if y'all want to hear about pirate booty and servants that are in debt, then you'll need to tune in next week. But before y'all leave out, why don't y'all head down below and leave a comment. Let us know what you guys thought about today's Bible study. And if you will, while you're down there, why don't you smash that like button and subscribe if you like this kind of Bible study.
And don't forget to stand up and use your voice.
Bye, heathens.
Bye, y'all.